So what is the best time and day to do a webinar? Well, scheduling is really important because you really want to get as many people onto your webinar as possible. And like anything in social media, there are good times and there are bad times to do them. And if you do them at the wrong time, you're automatically going to get less people onto your webinars. Now, what I've done to find out about this is I've researched a lot of reading to see who is saying what about timings and try to distill all the best advice so that I can share it with you, because I want to make sure that when I do my webinars, I actually deliver them at the best time and date. The idea is simple, that if you can find the optimum times to deliver your webinar, then you're going to get more people on than you will if you do it at a bad time. And if it's that simple to get more people, then with all the clever things you do with SEO and marketing and all the rest of it, scheduling becomes one of the absolutely most important factors in a successful webinar. Don't forget, when you are marketing a webinar, you have a short marketing cycle. Typically, it might be as short as 7 days. I certainly wouldn't recommend you try and market a webinar more than 10 days out. And therefore, you need to fit into your cycle. And obviously, the end point of your cycle is when you actually deliver the webinar. Well, actually, it's not, because there's quite a lot of follow-up you do afterwards. But you need to bear this in mind when you're putting your webinar together. So what do I think the best days are? Well, Tuesday, Wednesday or Thursday, I think, are the best days to do webinars. And this is because people are much more likely to turn up than they are at weekends. And if you have a webinar going out on a Tuesday, you have the opportunity to actually market it in the 24 hours beforehand, which is the Monday. And then if you end up doing a webinar on a Thursday, you've got the Friday to do all the follow-up. So those are the 3 days I'd recommend. And in terms of the best times, the consensus seems to be 2 p.m, 4 p.m, or 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Now, for me, in the UK, I have to add 5 hours to all of those numbers. So that's actually a 7 p.m, a 9 p.m, or indeed a 1 a.m. in the morning time for me, in order to meet the requirements of the biggest market, which is obviously the American market. And the idea is by doing them at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, you're still going to be able to pick up the people on the West Coast as well as people in Europe. So I'm sure you understand the positioning of that. You're trying to make sure you get as many people from different time zones able to come in and join your webinar. But don't forget, it's also good to maybe do the webinar a couple of times and offer people different time slots, and they want to be spaced apart so that you can actually capture people at different time zones. And don't forget as well, the people not just in Europe but in the Far East as well. Particularly the Australian market's a really big market, and you shouldn't be ignoring that. So everything you're doing about scheduling should be thinking about, what's the best time to do my webinar in order to maximize the number of people who are going to attend it?